Hello there everyone, welcome to episode number 8 of Amateur Hour, the show in which we teach ourselves how to code in increments of about an hour. In episode 8 we're going to be focusing on finishing lecture number 2, so that after lecture number 2 we can start practicing. Anyway, we have a lot of things to do, we have slightly over an hour of lecture still to watch, so let's get on with it. Let's go to the Amateur Hour. I would like to reiterate what we learned in the first part of lecture number 2. First, we learned what an array is, which is a list of elements of the same data type, which sounds a bit cryptic, but it just means that all of the things you are putting in one set must all be of the same sort of data. So they must all be an integer, or all must be a string. So you could have an array which consists of the element 3, the element 5, and the element 10. Then we also learned how to compile without a compiler, though the teacher did say at the same time that it's very unlikely that we're ever going to be using this. But they also talked about what a compiler does, which is pre-processing, loading your libraries, so for instance your CS50, which we're using in this course, but also the standard I/O. Compiling, which is turning your C language code, or whichever language you're using, into assembly language. Then assembling, which was turning your assembly language into zeros and ones for your computer to process. And linking, put all of the zeros and ones in the right order so that your code can actually be run. And then the teacher also showed a few debugging tools, which were printf to show what is currently being done by the program you wrote. A debugger program, which is used to go over your lines of codes very slowly, so you can more easily as a human follow what's going on. You can also make it stop at certain points or jump to a specific point. And then there was also rubber ducking, which was talking to your rubber ducky. And yeah, there was not that much new information given to us, and I'm kind of surprised by how little extra information we had. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's go to lecture number 2. As you can see, we have slightly over 1 hour to go, so we'll have to get started real quick. The teacher has now shown us that string is an array of characters. So he first started out making 3 individual characters and printing out those 3 individual characters, and then he's saying, well, this string consists of 3 individual characters, so I have an array of single characters which makes a string. So those two things are related to each other. So your computer uses a null to know when one string is ending and something else can start. If you have a string, it of course is a list of a few characters after each other, so an array of characters. And a null bit looks like 8 zeros in your data. And then your computer knows if I ever see 8 zeros in a row, then I can start doing the next thing. You can see here on the screen that there is an S brackets 3, which is asking the program to look at the data which is stored under the third part of the array. Well, it doesn't exist because we only have like, what do we have? We have H, I, and exclamation point. So what is the fourth number or the fourth thing in this array? Well, that's of course the null pointer, which makes it so that the next thing can start. But there is of course a null there. So it will say the fourth character in your array is null, and that will always happen. So this is something that I've often noticed with online seminars, is that professors are not always that adamant at repeating the questions that are asked them. This teacher used about, I think not too long, about 4 or 5 minutes to answer questions from the class. But every time you have to listen to the answer he's given, and then by the answers he's giving, interpret what the question might have been. Can you repeat the question? Looks like we're going to be using the stir length, which is a piece of code which is made in a library which can tell you the length of a string. Last episode we said we wanted to look at the CS50.8, and now he's already showing the CS50 manual page where you can check which functions are in which libraries. Let me just check if I can find this page on the web. So we just type CS50 manual, we put it in Google, let's see what happens. CS50 manual page, and yeah, we're on the same page that the professor is in, so it looks like we'll be using this during the courses already. And let's see if we can find the same thing he did. String. Okay, so these are all functions that are in certain libraries that have things you can do with strings. For instance, you can do getString if you have the library CS50H, and they're currently using strlen, the length, calculate the length of a string, and that comes from the library string.h. Okay. He's made a bit of code where you don't use the getString function to print out a string. He used a while loop for it. It's correct, it does what it's supposed to, but it's not well made, so I'm curious what is not exactly well made here. I'm starting to think that anything that compiles and that works as it's supposed to, I should see as one of the most beautiful things ever made, because, well, at the very least it's going to be in the top 5 best programs I've ever written. Okay, we're going to be writing a program that translates lowercase letters to higher case letters. So first he made a program to turn letters which are lowercase into letters which are higher case, and now he's saying, yeah, we all didn't need to do that because they actually have a library which can do this for you. Amazing. If you were to fully understand every library that has ever been coded, you wouldn't actually have to use your brain. Oh, we're going to hear why it's int main void now. Okay, let's go. Int main, especially void part, said the program is not going to allow the user to insert command lines. So things like make or run or remove are blocked out by the void part. So if you put something else than void behind those brackets, it says the user is allowed to write down command lines here. So now we're going to play around with the int part of the int main void. He's saying that the int is a return value, and we're going to change that now. So the main will keep going and keep working as long as you're not returning something other than a 0. And now he's put in the code if something went wrong, if the user did something wrong, so argc is not 2, so the user made an error. Then we're returning 1, and then it says to the program, okay, we're stopping now because our main is not 0, and he calls that an exit status. Wait, that just made me realize that he's also put down, after the printf hello, whatever the input was, return 0, but that return 0 doesn't actually do anything, I think. So why did he put it down? And I guess as a follow-up he gave the answer that even if something goes right, it should be good practice to return 0 then manually. But I don't see yet why. We're going to be practicing with the assignments from this lesson so that we can start lecture number 3 at the start of next amateur hour. So there will be links to the assignments down below over there. Anyway, I hope you liked this episode. We're going to be practicing a lot, and I hope to see you in the next amateur hour. See you around.